That's for sure. I'll see if she can.
Barb, can you hear us?
Barb, can you hear us? Say that one more time. Okay, thank you. All right. Let's keep moving. Okay, this is business item. Conditional use permit for gravel pit. Pursuant to the Board of County Commissioners reconsideration decision, the council will make reasoned findings on the previously heard conditional use permit. Findings will be made based on the record from the original public hearing, and no new information can be presented during deliberation. Okay. So, will staff please tell us, make sure we're all on the same page of exactly what we're doing tonight on this one.
Tristan Borkwin, Assistant Planning Director. So this conditional use permit for the gravel pit was heard in August 2023, and the council made the decision to deny the conditional use permit. After that decision, the applicant appealed that decision to the commissioners. The commissioners upheld your original decision to deny. Then after an appeal, there is a 15-day period to reconsider commissioner's decision, which they did. And the commissioner's decision during the reconsideration was to remand it back to council as a business item to make clear and concise findings, because when they were looking at the record, they determined that your findings were conclusory and did not have enough information in them, and we needed to come back and redo the findings. So we are here today to look through the original record only, make reasoned findings, and make a new decision.
Okay. Does that make sense to everybody?
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense, Barb? Okay. So, do we want to discuss anything? Do we want to just start working through findings? How do we want to proceed with this? We have the transcript from the meeting, which is really long.
Extensive.
Yeah, and just for
Really
the
well.
record, you have everything from the original, so you have the original staff reports, all sign-up sheets from the original public hearing, all letters that were received prior to the public hearing, the transcripts, the original findings. I think that's everything.
Just the stuff from our
Just
meeting.
the stuff from the April or
August
August meeting.
Okay. Okay. Did everybody read all 400 pages of it? Because I did not.
I got through a chunk of it.
Our original findings are on start on page 290. 290 and 291. But actual findings are on 291, but. There's the. We actually go through findings. Okay, how do you guys wanna proceed? Cause I have no idea. Just work through findings again?
Yeah, I think that's probably the way to do it.
Okay. And we've got, I saw staff notes in there.
As a suggestion, you could start on 291 and read your original findings.
Right, that's what I meant.
And from that point, expand upon that. Your reasoning, your rationale, and your defensible position relative to anything in the ordinance as well as public testimony, etc. And so, as an example, the required findings for conditional use permit, the proposed use, this was the finding, the proposed use would adversely affect surrounding properties to a materially greater extent than would a permitted use in the district. And the comment was, by comparison, an impact of permitted uses. How would you take that and expand that through your logic, rationale, reasoning, and then create defensible positions relative to ordinance or public testimony, etc. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, that is what I interpret the commission's position to be by remanding this back and having clearer findings.
So where do we start?
So just clarifying our original findings.
Compared to the impact of permitted use, I mean, that's what we've got in here, but I think the thought process on that was impact. The uses in that area are all residential. So if we're talking about impact between residential and between a gravel pit, there's a significant change in the use.
So you have,
But we're talking about the district,
Well, and that's where,
right? And and it's, half the property is ag and half of it is, or not half of it, but some of it is residential suburban.
that's right,
But all the surrounding uses are residential.
that's right.
And that's what you're saying is,
That's what I'm saying is the surrounding uses, I mean, the surrounding uses in that area are residential. So we're talking about material greater extent than would be permitted in the district.
so that said, what would be those adverse effects? And some of those can be from your memory of
We had pretty significant
testimony that came from surrounding people, etc.
Significant increase in heavy truck traffic, significant increase in year-round dust, significant
noise.
increase
noise
in
pollution.
noise,
Chuck, you're going down the correct path.
a significant increase in industrial lighting. Because one of our things was any lighting would have to be, right, but it's industrial lighting nonetheless.
Are we going too fast for you? No?
With dust comes a significant increase in potential health effects. Additionally, upon completion of use, parcel would then become essentially unusable for any other purpose. Pit reclamation does not necessarily include and is not required to include the refilling of the pit. Trying to get to my other list of things. Somewhere in here, there is a list of permitted uses, and I cannot find it. Does anyone know what page it's on, as I go through 80 pages of transcripts? That is not it. Couldn't find my notes from the last meeting, what's in the previous meeting?
You're looking for the original staff report? Is that
No,
what you're looking for?
I'm trying to find the permitted uses section of the ordinance. I could go to the ordinance, which is probably what I should do.
If you're going to the ordinance, check at section 395.
I'm just gonna do that. Oop, I turned it off. There we go. Oh, that's what I wanted.
So looking at the transcript, I think we talked about a lot of the uses. Single-family residences, small to medium wind turbines, bed and breakfast, less than 6 bedrooms, carnival or circus, commercial livestock operation, daycare, less than 6 kids, farming operation, farming equipment sales, fire station, commercial greenhouse, indoor outdoor kennels, wholesale nursery, parks, public service facilities, religious assemblies, academic schools, commercial stables, utility transmission lines, and utility installation.
None of those uses, if we're talking about materially greater impact, none of those uses are a all-day, everyday activity. Am I correct?
I mean, you got livestock operations that are gonna be all day, every day, but
We're still not talking about the same traffic in and out.
from a traffic
We're talking
standpoint, correct.
livestock operation, agriculture, those are seasonal.
Right.
They'll have that increase, but it's not every day of the week. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
That's what,
They're not
that's
gonna,
what my thought process was in that one, is it is a significant change from what's allowable.
right. And going with what Chuck was just saying earlier about the noise and the dust and the lighting and stuff, none of those,
Allowed uses?
allowed uses would create that much
Exactly.
impact in that type of impact, I guess.
Did we beat that one enough?
Let me read it to you and then you
Okay.
can decide. I think so.
Okay.
The uses in the area are all residential and the property is zoned agricultural. The impact of the gravel pit would be greater than agricultural uses because of the increase in noise, traffic, dust, and industrial lighting. The increase in dust comes with increased detrimental health effects. Pit reclamation does not include the refilling of the pit and would render the parcel unusable to other more compatible uses in the future. Single-family residences, farming operations, small and medium wind turbines, and academic schools are other permitted uses in the district, and none of those uses have the extensive impact that a gravel pit would.
I would change traffic to heavy vehicle traffic,
Yeah.
Commercial vehicle traffic.
commercial vehicle traffic, yeah, that's probably better.
And hold that thought, because that's what comes up in the next one, Chuck.
Right.
Do you have the original ones still?
Yeah, I have that there.
Right, so.
Want me to read it?
You good if we move on, Tristan?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, you good.
The proposed use would cause an undue disruption of travel or an extraordinary increase in volume of traffic in the vicinity of the proposed use. The increase would be substantial increase. Our answer was the increase would be substantial increase in truck traffic. So, I guess correct me if I'm wrong, but we're talking about, no, I'm trying to recall, I probably should go back through here, but The operation was intended to be a 7-day-a-week operation, even if it's not. During the hours of
It
operation,
was a 7 to 7 operation, I can't remember.
yeah, so during the hours of operation, the heavy truck and commercial traffic on all the arterial roads will increase.
So there's two items to address: undue disruption.
Yep.
And extraordinary increase.
So the increase would be an undue disruption for,
It would be an extraordinary increase in commercial vehicles.
But the other critical component to address is that it also says traffic in the vicinity of the proposed use, not like directly in front of.
Right.
So it's,
well, all those arterial roads that feed the freeway would now all of a sudden have heavy commercial traffic and heavy truck traffic feeding them at the same time as they're being shared with school buses and moms dropping kids off and picking them up from school every day.
okay,
And it's a siphon, I know a portion of Rio Vista, down below there's the gravel pit, but the closest intersection of Siphon and Rio Vista does not see that high of truck traffic, this type of truck traffic. And it's a small intersection.
I'm thinking back, based upon testimony from the applicant as well as from those in support as well as those against. Do you remember if there were any specific citations of traffic count?
There was somebody who did a kind of informal traffic count, but I don't think we heard a,
Traffic study.
yeah, 200 trips per day was the number from the applicant. That was, and I don't know that we ever clarified. So I know I asked that question, right? There, actually,
So you asked,
Ulrich,
It's one of the first
Yeah.
questions I asked.
yeah, sorry. And it's anticipated additional 200 trips a day, truck trips.
Who referenced 200 trips?
It would have been Dak Maxfield for one of the applicants. And in the end, that was, and he also stated, we generally run end dumps with pups. So those aren't,
Single dump trucks.
right. And then here's, yeah. End dumps are around 13 tons, Dak says, is that right? And then pups are 10 tons. And then something about belly dumps, which, are between 20, 25, and 30 tons according to John Wilson, our transcript. So the other,
later on, you did ask Kyle what
right, and then I
what
talked
his
to Kyle
approximate
and I,
trips were in that area.
and Kyle, and I've got it in here too, because I highlighted, I got that far through the review.
On page 365,
Is it 365? I
Yeah.
don't have those numbers.
or 365 of 790.
Oh, in there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, Kyle got sassy and said that the highways are fine. I'm just kidding. No, what did you say exactly? Let me find out.
So he
'cause I-
said-
72, check, if you have those numbers on there, page 72.
I have it right.
The other item in that equation, Chuck, is that I believe you had conversation or council had conversation with Kyle
Right.
based upon traffic counts and his road design standards, what constituted a particular number of extraordinary. Now, that said, extraordinary traffic counts are quote-unquote vehicles, which are personal vehicles,
Right.
cars, trucks, light-duty trucks, etc. I don't know that Kyle's statistics necessarily
Anticipate that.
anticipate
Right.
a
Sure.
200 trailer with a pump in and out, et cetera. So
Right. Well, the
it's
other,
one of those that you would need to do a reasoned finding based upon your rationale and logic of testimony that was given.
Do you want me to read what I have so far?
sure,
The operation is proposed to be 7 AM to 7 PM. During operation, the heavy commercial vehicle traffic will significantly increase. During testimony, 200 additional trips per day was noted by one of the applicant's representative. The increase will be an undue disruption of normal traffic patterns. All other roads that feed traffic flow will be congested with heavy commercial traffic at the same times as school and work traffic.
it also impacts the, rural nature of the roads out there. People riding horses, kids riding bikes. That amount of traffic significantly changes the way those roads will be used.
Okay. So we're good to move on to the next one, C?
I am, yep.
You good?
I think I'm good. The only other, and I don't know if it would go on that one or not, but is that there was a lot of testimony from the public about those roads being used, like you said, for recreation.
Right.
Yeah, so I did just add, it would also impact the rural nature of the roads in the area as they are currently used by bikes, horses, and the like.
Yeah, that works.
Right. Alright, C, the proposed use would not damage the public health, safety, or general welfare within the vicinity or be materially injurious to properties or improvements in the vicinity based upon conditions as follows due to lack of evidence in the contrary by applicant.
Always seems
Very contradictory.
So I think it-
Struggled with that.
I think it
I think it would.
would, I agree.
It was mislabeled.
Right, and they provided no evidence to the contrary, first of all. There was significant testimony in regard to
Dust.
potential health risks and potential, property value impacts. I still fail to see how leaving a, what is it, 150 acre hole in the middle of a residential neighborhood at the end of, the process. I mean, we're talking a 25-year process. We know the development will continue to expand that way because there are relatively few other places for it to expand. And the comprehensive plan has sort of dictated to a certain extent that that be the way that that development expand in that area. And so consequently, I don't know how leaving a 50-foot hole in the middle of that neighborhood doesn't constitute harm as time goes forward. You know, not to mention a hazard for a variety of reasons, which we may address later.
Right.
So. There we are.
I messed up a couple good things here on this one, huh? So I mislabeled that one, it was supposed to be would, not would not. And then my vote was wrong.
Oh, we still love you, buddy.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Well, what do you have so far, Kristen?
The applicant provided no evidence to the contrary, and there was significant testimony regarding detrimental health impacts. Leaving a pit in the area in the future would cause harm to properties in the area since that is depicted as an area of residential growth in the comprehensive plan.
I'm happy with that.
You got anything, Barb?
Will you go to future land use map?
Just making sure you're awake. Oh, it goes on.
It goes on.
There's some interesting misquotes in the transcript, I think.
There's some inaudibles in there too. Yep.
So I think on C, just reading through the transcript, we talked a lot about the burden of proof being on the applicant.
That's right.
Right. And I think that's what we kind of,
That's what we were
trying
trying
to
to
say.
make the point, was
Yeah,
that the applicant
So,
did not come back to us and say, look, here's the numerous studies that say that
dust.
gravel pit dust is good for you.
Yeah, exactly.
right, maybe not good, but it's not gonna harm you or
Yeah,
whatever.
right.
it is. But that, I think that was, on that one specifically, it's in the transcript that the burden of proof is on the applicant, and that there was no study or proof to say that
This
a
was
gravel
harmless.
pit is not going to be harmful.
In any fashion. I
In
mean,
any
it's not just,
correct.
it's not just harmful, it's general welfare, safety issues.
Right.
Materially injurious is another one of those questions where we get caught up sometimes. It's tough to define what materially injurious is, but they didn't provide any studies that indicated that it wouldn't be materially injurious to those people living nearby.
Was there evidence or was there study relative, evidence relative to the decrease of property values that was presented to the council in that original meeting? And the reason being is that could show materially injurious to adjacency.
So I deliberately didn't bring up the property value thing. I mean, we all know that it affects property values. But when you're talking about property values and seeing the escalation of property values that we've seen in the last 20 years, how do you say a gravel pit affected it or didn't affect it? Everybody's property values went through the roof. And so I thought it was going into an it's arbitrary whether or not you're gonna say, without a crystal ball, you're gonna say, well, I could have got $500,000 for my house, but now there's a gravel pit there, I'm getting 400,000, right?
There have been studies to support that. They just weren't quoted at this meeting. There was significant
I
testimony.
had to ask that question because I'm past 60 and my memory doesn't go back to
Right.
August.
Right, oh, believe me,
There was a lot of folks that were stating that.
and there is documentary evidence when sometimes that proximity to a gravel pit can impact property
Well,
values. That was
but not
not
present-
discussed,
But not presented.
but not presented at this hearing.
I thought there was, or was it just testimony?
It was
about
testimony, and the
No,
reason, and the
no.
reason I didn't,
Okay.
and the reason I didn't keep noodling it is, okay, for example, my house. When I finished building my house, the appraiser came to me and he reduced the cost of my house on the appraisal by $40,000 because I'm on a railroad track. Okay, now if we could have got somebody that came in and said, okay, I'm an appraiser, a gravel pit is gonna significantly reduce the cost within a quarter, that's what I was looking for, but I couldn't put it on here
Yeah,
because
that happened
don't
in a
have that
separate
data.
hearing from this.
that's right.
Okay.
But
If that
again,
had
not
been-
challenging the public testimony, because I'm smart, I know if I'm looking at house A out in the beautiful part of Chubbuck that doesn't have a gravel pit, or house B that's identical next to a gravel pit, I'm not gonna buy B, right? I didn't wanna bring, you know what I mean? It's hard to say that it was proved that it would,
Okay.
without having that data.
Well, there were significant concerns about it. I think we as a council believe that a gravel pit may be injurious, but that's not the same thing as that being factual.
And again, part of our role in this council, correct me if I'm wrong, is to try to put our personal opinions and feelings aside and try to listen to what is being presented to us on both sides. And I know that,
But then
you're in these
one
meetings
of
with me
the-
too.
but
We
one of
win
the-
half the time and
right.
people are happy, and half the time everybody's upset. So no matter what, 50% leaves storming out and mad at us.
One of the conditions that we have is to consider that, and one of our jobs is to consider what's best for development in the county as well, right?
But again, does that
Please
bring
show
in,
that
does
everyone's
that,
nodding at
does
me,
that bring
but-
personal opinion into the role? I mean,
Well, it may or it may not, but I mean, so we have to decide what's more important. If this were a situation where we knew for a fact that there wasn't an issue, right? That it wasn't gonna be a problem, we would, I mean, we do that all the time. We look at that and people bring up their concerns and we recognize that those concerns are, not realistic. They're perhaps driven by something different than,
fear, whatever.
yeah, they're driven by fear or by sort of a desire for things not to change or whatever, then that's something else we consider. So you just gotta look at all of those points of view.
Okay.
So what
That's
are
it.
you,
That's
So,
it.
yeah, so I added a sentence and switched some stuff around, so I'll read it again. Leaving a pit in the area would cause harm to properties in the future, since it is depicted as an area of residential growth in the comprehensive plan. The applicant provided no evidence to the contrary, and there was significant testimony regarding detrimental health impacts. It is the applicant's burden of proof to show there would be no harm to the public with a gravel pit in the area.
Moving along.
Yep,
Well summed up.
okay.
D,
D was the proposed use would not be consistent with the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan of the county. Referencing the flume, and does not meet the goals in the comprehensive plan and policy 1.5.2. So we said specifically which part of the comprehensive plan it does not meet. So do we need to add more to this one?
no, you might expand on Chuck's, particular comment about leaving a 50-foot deep hole on a
Okay,
X number of
yeah,
acres.
because,
150 odd acres.
Because
In a
future land
proposed
use.
Future land use map, residential.
Yep. now there's a 50-foot hole, so.
Yeah, an undeveloped bowl.
Undeveloped,
50
yeah,
acres
so
in the middle of it.
let's add that to it then, is besides the point that we made on the comprehensive plan policy 1.5.2, the giant hole that would be left after 25 years no longer is usable in the future land use,
For any land use.
for any land
Really.
use, but it's especially that it's already mapped out as residential, future residential.
Residential suburban.
Residential suburban, yes.
Is that correct, Marge? Will you click on that?
I think that's what it is. Yeah, RS, I think it is.
Future land use.
Yep.
Thank you.
Does the staff report have what policy 1.5.2 is?
It says. I know, I see Elisa's fingers going 100 miles an hour.
Ensure land use actions, decisions, and regulations align with the county's responsibility to protect public health, safety, and
You're gonna have
welfare.
to read that much slower. Ensure land use action.
Just cut and paste it.
Okay, remember where this thing starts. Oh my god. There we go.
Chuck, you mentioned something in the meeting,
Yes?
yeah, on this specific item, that, it's not consistent with the future land use map. I think it's contestable whether it's consistent with the value judgments as stated at the beginning of the comp plan. And it doesn't meet our goal of the general welfare of the existing property owners.
Well, yeah, 1.5 says that ensure that county's land use policies and regulations do not violate private property rights.
Yeah.
But it's not only the private property rights of the current landowner, it's the property rights of all the surrounding landowners as well.
Future landowners.
Yeah, and future landowners, that's good.
Okay.
And then you have a fair amount of work to do on the last one, E,
Yep.
FYI.
Are we good with D?
Would you like me to read it?
Yes,
Read
please.
what you have, please.
The
Yep.
future land use map designates this area as residential suburban, and a gravel pit would not fit within this future use. The gravel pit would not be consistent with policy 1.5.2, ensure land use actions, decisions, and regulations align with the county's responsibility to protect public health, safety, and welfare. The hole left by the gravel pit after reclamation would not be usable for future land use as outlined in the future land use map.
I like that. Okay. Alright, the proposed use would not be designed to be as compatible in terms of building height, bulk, scale, setback, open spaces, and landscaping with adjacent uses as is practical, per requirements from Bannock County Planning and Zoning and the conditions from the council.
This has always confused me. Because were we to approve it, it would meet that qualification.
Well,
Because we would require it to meet that qualification.
yeah, but how are you required to meet the qualifications with the statement with adjacent uses as is practical?
Well, because there's some provision for that, right?
So,
Oh, I see where you're going.
Yeah.
Oh, good heavens.
So per requirements for Bannock County. is
Proposed
what we
use
said.
is not compatible.
so council, remember that, for a conditional use permit to be approved, you have to find all 5 affirmative,
Right.
okay? That said, there's also in Idaho statute states that you, as you go through reasoned findings, you also have to provide some evidence about how the applicant could bring it into conformance for approval. That said, under E, you can deliberate in the affirmative, but it still is, for all intents and purposes, denied because you have other items that are of the negative, so therefore you can't approve. You could, based upon our ordinance, you could make recommendations through conditions of approval. They would have to have a 40-foot berm and landscaping of trees every 25 feet, to bring it into compliance with ordinance, for compliance with the CUP. Beyond that, that's the only counsel I can share with you relative to the ordinance, okay?
I think it's pretty clear we don't think that the proposed use is compatible with adjacent uses.
We know that. Yep.
However, it could be, I mean, we would have requirements on it that would be prohibitive for its use in order to make it compatible with adjacent uses. And even then, we would still be facing the problem of what happens after and all the issues about the essentially uselessness of it upon completion. You know, if they have to plant an old growth forest around the edges of it in order to use it, by the time they're done, then maybe it becomes useful as a park or something. I can't imagine it, but it's possible, I suppose. But in this case, do we just say it's not possible to design it to be compatible with adjacent uses?
Based upon what reason?
Oh, based upon the reason that it's incompatible in all other ways? And that we can't find a way to make it compatibly useful? I mean, I suppose we could find a way to do that. Or we would say that
Based upon the impossibility of enforcing a condition that it be returned back to its natural state, I mean.
or original state.
Well, we're talking about the proposed use,
Right.
not when it's all said and done.
Yeah, but at the same time, the proposed use, to get it back to where it's
Alters the
within.
physical state.
That's right, it alters the physical state and it can't be put back into the usage of an adjacent property,
As is practical.
as is practical.
Define that.
It can't practically be, yeah. brought back to.
Okay.
Useful, it can't practically be brought back to usefulness, would be part of that certainly.
Okay.
And it can't practically be cushioned for the adjacent uses, from the adjacent uses. Reasonably and practically. Right, I mean,
Reasonably,
if we decided to actually, if we were in favor of permitting, but we wanted to make it have zero impact
it's not practical.
to the surrounding properties, how would we do that? And I am having trouble imagining the process by which we would do that.
You're talking about reducing the impact?
Yeah, how do you
Bit
reduce
of-
the impact to, I mean, you could limit the size of the trucks. You could limit the speeds the trucks and the routes they could travel. That would work on some of the traffic, but it still would.
Or you're creating
all that.
significant buffer.
Right, and then a
That-
real buffer, which cuts down on the acreage they could use.
Right.
And a berm which would protect people, and then how do you bring down that dust? They'd have to water constantly, but then water is a problem. And we don't want them watering constantly in a pit that's 40 feet closer to the water table. I'm just not sure how you, I mean, then you have to limit the amount of depth that they'd have to dig, which basically works them out of it being a working pit, which is not what we wanna do, you know? I mean, I want them to be successful where they find a place to be successful, so. I just don't know how to word that appropriately.
In the original staff report, conditions of approval upon the granting of a conditional use permit, conditions may be attached to a permit including but not limited to minimizing the adverse impact on other developments such as requirements for special yards, open space, buffers, fences, walls, and screening, requirements for installation and maintenance of landscaping and erosion control measures, requirements for road improvements and dedications, regulations of signs, regulation of hours or other characteristics of the operation, establishment of development schedules or time limits for performance or completion, controlling the sequence and timing of the development, controlling the duration of the development, assuring that development is maintained properly, designating the exact location and nature of the development, requiring the provision for on-site or off-site public facilities or services, and requiring more restrictive standards than those generally required in an ordinance, and imposing other conditions that the Planning and Development Council deems necessary to ensure compatibility with surrounding uses, to preserve the public health, safety, and welfare, and to ensure compliance with the standards listed in section 530.6 of the zoning ordinance.
with what was stated in A through D, I don't know how we could have put conditions in place that could have done that.
Okay.
A through D speak exactly to that there was no practical conditions that would neutralize,
As is practical.
as is practical, that would neutralize
Zero health.
the traffic, the dust, the health, the increase in activity in the area, you know what I mean?
Yep. Okay.
Can we put that on there? Referencing A through D? That we didn't feel like
Yeah,
there was
impacts
anything
previously
we
noted.
practically could have put in place?
Or E?
For
Yeah.
E,
Or
For E.
Okay.
we're talking about E. I mean, that's, what they're asking there is exactly what we've just gone through and stated in A through D, that there is no practical, there is nothing that we could do that is practical to make it fit with the area that they're trying to put it.
To fit building height, bulk scale,
Yeah.
setbacks, open spaces, and manage health, safety,
mean,
and
what-
welfare of the general public.
Yeah, I mean, would you require that half the land has to be open space? I mean, is that practical? No.
Okay. Tristan, do you have? Give that structure.
Any additional comments, Barb?
Agreed, yeah. Hopefully that's what the commissioners leave for us.
Will you read that back? When you think you have it?
A gravel pit would not be compatible to adjacent residential uses because of the increased industrial use caused by the pit. The increase in heavy commercial traffic, dust, light pollution, and industrial noises would not permit this proposal to apply practical design standards. The proposed use alters the physical state of the property, and it could not be reclaimed to a useful property for residential uses.
Does that sound good to everybody? I'm good with that.
Does that sound good, Barb? Okay.
Okay, so one of the items that you did not do in the previous, because it did come up in the negative, you chose not to go down the path of adding approval conditions. And my question is, do you choose to study the conditions of approval from the staff report, or are you content that you have reasoned defensible findings that, as this potentially could still move forward, are defensible? If
So,
you're
real
good
quick,
with it.
Because I've talked to legal about it in the past, you cannot add approval conditions if you're not approving it.
Okay.
And that's what I thought Brian
Yeah.
had said to us, and that's why I think we even, if you go through the
We
transcript.
did do conditions
I think
before,
we
but that
talked
was
about
not correct, right?
Yeah,
Right.
okay. Thank you
But
for the
do we
clarity.
need to have a way for it to be approved as part of a denial?
I don't understand what that means.
Isn't that
That's
what
what conditions
Idaho
are,
code
isn't
said?
it?
Okay, so
No,
Idaho Code, real quick, Tristan, regarding conditional use permits, Idaho Code 67-6512. Denial of a special use permit or approval of a special use permit with conditions unacceptable to the landowner may be subject to the regulatory taking analysis provided for by section 67-8003 Idaho Code, consistent with requirements established thereby. The reason that I bring that up is that you haven't placed any conditions, you've just basically done, for all intents and purposes, a
Denial.
denial.
Yep.
Okay?
Sure. But basically what that's saying is even if we had put conditions in place, they're subject to,
Well, either
If they
way,
don't
we
accept-
could,
they don't
we
accept them,
could,
they're
we could permit
subject
it
to.
with conditions which they could then appeal, or we can deny it, which they can then appeal.
That is good.
That's right, okay.
Okay?
Which is what they'll do. Which is
So,
fine.
just so I'm clear, whichever direction we go here, is this, this is going back to commissioners, or this is, we're just clarifying what we previously did?
That is correct.
Okay, so there's no appeal after tonight?
there is.
There is an appeal.
This is a decision.
Okay.
You are making a decision as council. So this is subject to an appeal, just like any other council
Okay.
decision.
That's, okay,
The
that's what I.
original decision is closed. That whole loop has been closed by the reconsideration, which brought us back here. This is now a new decision.
That can then go
Which
through
is
that process
appealable.
all over again. Okay.
Okay, so do we need to go through,
Oh, we just did that.
we just went through it.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
so
we
we
did-
do need to make another motion?
We do need to make another motion.
Okay, you want me to do that? Because I got it right here.
If you're ready,
Okay, so based on the record and the discussion this evening, I move to deny the request by John Wilkes on behalf of Staker Parsons Company, DBA Idaho Material and Construction, for a conditional use permit described in the application materials as supplemented with additional information attached in the staff report and according to the testimony received, and to adopt the proposed findings and order for signature by the chair or vice chair.
Before we do anything there, that's not Is that correct? Because we didn't get, okay, it wouldn't be with additional information attached in the staff report unless we're talking about the
Because,
original.
yep, cause
Talking
right
original.
now we're pretending it's August 10th.
Okay,
We are hearing everything we heard, so all of that would be attached to this motion.
All of this is the record that we're
Correct.
deciding on.
so I second that.
Okay. Okay, so we have a motion to deny by Ed, second by Chuck. Okay. Yes.
No.
I don't
I
think
would
so
say no.
because we have the record in
Right.
front of us
And you
from
heard
that
our
meeting
discussion.
and
If you reviewed it, well, you do you, Barb, really.
yeah. I don't think you have to, I guess.
Yeah,
is
I
what
don't
I'm
think you have
saying.
to either.
Well, it's August 10th, Barb, and you're here.
Turns out you weren't absent.
Too bad the weather outside isn't August
Yeah.
10th, but that's okay. Okay, so motion to deny,
Seconded by Chuck.
seconded by Chuck,
Roll call vote.
roll call, just to clarify. So everybody's on the same page.
So
A
everybody
yes,
tossed it at a golf
a
course.
yes would be
Deny.
to deny, a
Correct.
no would be to
Not.
not deny, essentially. Okay, roll call.
Chuck Heisler,
Yes.
Edward Ulrich,
Yes.
Stuart Ward,
Yes.
Barbara Hill.
Okay, motion carries 4-0. Okay, that
Thank
is.
you, everybody, for your patience to get to this point.
Thank you. Agenda.
But they can take all the testimony to this meeting and so we'll have to go.
Okay. We'll keep going. Agenda item number 9, items of interest.
Al Jensen, Planning Director, Bannock County, update on any recommendations to commissioners. I have none.
We wait for a second, just because we're not gonna be able to post this recording.
If not, I'll get Jackie, will you write home with you? Okay. Thank you for the offer, alternate. Sure. And she was my request for me.
Doesn't look like there's anybody here for any further discussion, general discussion, so.
Well, that
means the floor is yours.
Discussion of upcoming hearing items, are there any that council should be aware of for next week?
So next week, the 20th, I don't know.
We have two public
We
hearing
have two
items.
public hearings, we have a conditional use permit for a campground and a
Transfer development, right?
transfer of development rights. And then we have a preliminary plat for John, yeah, let's, anyway, out here on South Fifth,
Oh, not be here next week.
An extension.
and an extension request for Eastwood Estates.
And just as by way of announcement, on next Tuesday, March 19th at 2 p.m., we have our annual meeting between commission and council. And then following that meeting, we have approximately 30 minutes with an application for a planned unit development. And at that meeting, we will roughly develop the guidelines for that planned unit development.
Okay.
Okay?
Either one of those. It's my birthday and I think my wife has something planned. On Wednesday, not on Tuesday. I will be on Tuesday's meeting. Okay. In Tuesday's meeting, yes.
And
And
at
that
that
one
point,
is at the courthouse.
yes, and at that point, I have no other comments. You can move to the next item.
Okay. Citizen comments. Nobody,
What the heck?
nobody wants to talk to us?
I would like to note that I like this process better than the process we've been using for the previous 3.5 years. So keep it up.
Process being,
You making the notes. Us working on that, but you coalescing the notes together,
Figuring it out.
it makes things a lot more clear. I'm sure it's much more legible.
Right.
We moved through the meeting.
That means
a lot.
Chuck is signing up for another 2 years,
And we
right?
do move through the meetings a lot faster. Yeah, and I appreciate that.
Okay,
speaking of which, really quick, Ed, Barb, I've sent you a couple of emails. I don't wanna pressure you, but as soon as you know if you are wanting to do another term, please let me know. It's hard to get volunteers, so the sooner I know, the more applicants hopefully I will get, so.
I sent you one.
And I had another one that, I sent an email to Tristan today, a person that I know that was out of the Lava area as well, inquiring about what it takes to apply and et cetera. So we have,
I know somebody that might apply tomorrow.
okay, that would give us,
I've been talking to people too, so.
that would give us 5 applicants, of which most of them are pretty good caliber. Okay, thank you. Nothing else.
Okay, no work session tonight? Okay. Meeting is adjourned.